Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Elise. Welcome to Tello Tarot. For those who don't know, this channel explores tarot through intuition, symbolism, and story. Each reading is an entertaining space to reflect, imagine, and step into the unseen layers of the inner world you have, but also other realities. Anyway, in today's pick about reading what type of fairy you are, this is a fun intuitive exploration where we're tuning into your essence within the fairy realm, as if there is a version of you that already exists where magic is instinct and identity is woven into nature itself. Each pile comes with a mood board I've created to reflect the energy I was picking up on, helping you visually step into the atmosphere of your reading. Across each pile, we'll explore your origin, your hidden fairy power, your shadow trait, your role within the fairy realm, and what you are slowly evolving into over time. If you enjoy these kinds of intuitive, story-driven readings, don't forget to like the video and subscribe, please. It truly supports the channel and helps more people find these readings. Other than that, I'll let you kick back, relax, and choose your pile. I'll see you where you see me. Well, hello, Pile 1. Welcome to your reading, and welcome to your fairy self. Who are you as a fairy in this alternate fairy realm or universe we're exploring today in your reading? If you watched the intro, you'll know that there are about 4 or 5 sections of this reading where we divine exactly where you come from, your hidden fairy abilities or powers, your shadow side as a fairy, your role, and what you are meant to evolve into as this magical entity or being. And as you can see, pile 1 before you is a mood board I made as well, just to capture the energy that I picked up on that I believe shows exactly who you guys would be in this alternate life or situation. So to begin, we'll start with, as said, where do you come from? What's your origin story? And what I picked up from is the deity or energy that created you literally breathed you into being. Air energy is potent here with the breath card that I got. And you can see that you began as a thought form with this energy. And with this thought form, you were an idea, that was carried higher and higher, growing lighter and lighter through consciousness as pure inspiration. Now, this deity that birthed you or thought you into being had a vision of a world or reality that you are the energetic reflection of, birthed into matter. Some of you may have an affinity actually here for the fairy Tinkerbell, which is what I picked up on in her Disney movie. I don't know if you guys remember that movie. I watched it nonstop as a little girl, but in that movie, all fairies are born from a baby's first laugh or a baby's laughter, and that laughter is carried on the wind to Pixie Hollow. However, in your origin story, it is a point of inspiration from a being strong enough to create realities and worlds that you were brought into being, if that makes sense. So looking at the image I chose for this pile, it's like this being or energy creates within a deep reflective thought and stillness, and you may be a reflection of that as well. If you are an air sign, this definitely is a pile for you. So what realm were you actually birthed into? Well, I got the Akasha card. And if you guys want to see the cards, just let me know. But I just wanted to keep up your mood board just to kind of keep the aesthetic. But if you are interested, just let me know and I'll find a way to show them. But I received the Akasha card for your spread, and the Akashic records, which most of us know, is a place where all information of existence is stored and can be accessed. It's a 5th dimensional place. And what people don't know about the 5th dimension is that it's not necessarily a spatial dimension where beings move the way we do in the 3D. The 5th dimension is not visible or perceived visually. It's felt as love and inspiration. And the reason I say this so confidently is because I recently had a conversation with my higher self about the 4th and 5th dimension. And I've recently gotten into topology and non-Euclidean space and wanted to kind of pick my spirit guide's brain. I mentioned this in a previous video as well, but they did tell me like the fifth dimension is more intuitive and emotional than an actual physical space. The beings within it are luminous, they shine brightly, but they also hold sacred responsibility. But if you were to stick to a visual appearance, then it would look like the Akasha card. And it's the Akasha card from, oh man, I'll just have to list the decks here, but it's from that really, it's not even an old deck, but it was probably one of the first Oracle decks I ever got. But let me just stay on track and stop thinking out loud in your reading. Regardless, the Akashic records is a timeless place where the past, the present, and the future within the lower dimensions, honestly within all time and space and reality, exists at all phases at once. But you also see the infinite possibilities that they do have. So I'm assuming if your fairy self lived, let's say like within a tree, they would be able to experience the tree as a sapling, a wilted grandfather, and a forgotten stump within all of its seasons, but all the things it could transform into as well. And they would pay it no mind. It would just be like a timeless Tuesday to them. So I don't know if you guys can see the tree right there, but I have found that image on Pinterest and I was like, oh, okay, that kind of matches. Like, that's a good vibe. But yeah, your fairy self does, or at least we'll say, and with this energy, your fairy self lives in spatially a timeless place where everything within its own endless cycles or states or infinite states and possibilities exists at once, and there's no problem for your fairy self to perceive those things, but how are you shaped and formed? I would say we kind of already answered this question, but we have with the tarot here. I got the Fool reversed, Ace of Cups reversed, and Seven of Pentacles reversed. And remember how I said you were created from thought? Well, with these cards all reversed, it's as though you were created a little recklessly, or when your creator was like distracted. There wasn't real true clarity of mind or presence. Ace of Cups reversed could hint at there being a moment of sadness, grief, or even a well of emotions being suppressed that are bubbling to the surface for this being when you were brought alive or into awareness or consciousness, or you were birthed. And with the Seven of Pentacles reversed, it's like the materialization was not complete as well, or formed, or like you were formed with delay. I don't want to say that you were born broken as a fairy, but something about the process of forming you was just incomplete, or done in a rush, or was influenced by negative and repressed emotions. Maybe you yourself struggle with understanding your emotions in real life or translating the thought of them into words. My take is that this unbalanced formation either shows in how your fairy self communicates or as a physical trait, like wings that are too small or broken, because wings represent flight, right? And the element of air as well. So you can see kind of within the images here, it's like there are different wings, but they seem to express like a more darker side, or something like a little more melancholy. And even here, like you could see like your fairy self, especially in the top left photo, there's this kind of isolated, kind of sad, grief like, vibe that we get. So now let's look at look more into like what your home environment would be, or where you would live would look like, which we already kind of covered. But we have Nine of Swords clarified by Four of Wands reversed, Six of Pentacles by the Nine of Wands, and the Sun by Ace of Wands reversed. So it looks like where your fairy self lives is also pretty nerve-wracking. With the Four of Wands, your fairy self may not have a home, or if they do, it's very unstable. I think back to referencing that if your fairy self lived in a tree, it would experience it in all of its states of life. So with the Nine of Swords signifying that where you live, like it signifies like where you live stresses you out. Maybe your fairy self doesn't know how to live comfortably in a realm where things are constantly shifting and changing, like a lenticular card. Those cards you pick up, like the ones like sometimes they're collectors. I can't remember if they're like Pokemon card or whatever, but the ones that you pick up, and if you like kind of move them, the image shifts. Those are the cards that I'm talking about. And honestly, with this energy, some of your fairy selves just might live in a very dead space or place. With the Six of Pentacles and Nine of Wands, the environment has like a give and take aspect to it. And this could be as simple as like land where seeds planted bear fruit, but that Nine of Wands shows that it's not always the case. Your fairy self can't seem to obtain their fair share or tend the earth properly. And the creatures and beings around them may not have an issue, but your fairy self is like worn down by their home, very guarded. They don't feel like stable and connected to it. I believe your fairy self lives in a home that is a direct reflection of their mental state as well, because we have the sun here, and it feels like the cards are saying that everyone else around them doesn't seem to have like such a hard time with the environment. And like with the sun, like the environment can be joyous and abundant, but it requires a level of enthusiasm as well and passion that I just think your fairy self lacks. So my assumption is that the home your fairy self occupies is one within a spiritual realm where thoughts manifest reality almost instantaneously, but your fairy self is stuck living in an environment indicative of their inner fears, their isolation and anxiety. And for that, your fairy self either has no home, sorry if some of y'all are homeless, or struggles to live comfortably within one. And referencing a stereotypical tree home, I think of like a dead decaying tree, which is like exactly what I was pointing to with the image on the bottom left hand side. And the dead decaying tree like only needs an inhabitant with like a joyous vibration to return to its like actual abundant, tall and leafy youth. So moving forward, let's look at your abilities. So I got the storyteller reversed and the sanctuary reversed from the archetype cards. And the sanctuary card discusses using a sanctuary to retreat and hide, but in it you don't reflect impartially, like you sit on negative emotions and circumstances. So going back to like y'all kind of being a little depressticles, the storyteller reversed also says like you honestly, you just be lying. I'm gonna be honest, like your storyteller reverse is straight up like you're a liar, you embellish, and the stories that you tell bring harm. So even if you aren't an air sign, you could maybe have your Mercury in Aries, Gemini, or Scorpio or something. That's just what I picked up. And only because the shadow side of Mercury in those signs brings about manipulation, impulsiveness, and gossip, especially Gemini with the gossip. But here's the thing. I think your fairy self is a reflection of what created them. So I think your abilities involve distorting people's thoughts, making them step back into like harsh or painful memories as if they're like literally physically back there, like just on a whim. Your fairy self may play with people's minds and lead them to believe stories about themselves or others that just aren't true. And I don't think you do this purposely, unless that's what you vibe with. I think you do this because of the distorted way you were born. But for most of you, I think this is not done to harm, but it just ends up being that way. And honestly, someone in this pile might have like CPTSD. And we all struggle with our own mental health from time to time as well. But this could be like my fragile mental health pile. And I'm not saying if you have struggles with mental health that you guys in the real world are people who use that to manipulate and cause problems and you guys are unstable. No, I'm thinking honestly this energy here is a reflection of if you are struggling at the moment with mental health issues. It's reflecting, it's more so of an internal projections on yourself, or like having negative inner narratives that are more so harmful to you. This just feels like a very isolated pile, a pile that could be going through things or just has a really traumatic past. So what are your hidden unconscious powers? So we have the Saboteur reversed and Messiah for the archetype cards. Then with the tarot, we have Eight of Pentacles, Page of Wands reversed, and Six of Pentacles. And with the Saboteur reversed, it touches on the same previous abilities we divined. You induce, or at least your fairy self does, right? Induces self-destructive behavior in people, or you undermine them. But with the Messiah, these abilities are meant to serve humanity. And with the image you chose, I intuitively feel like your fairy self at some point has a moment of reflection like, okay, like I want to play with humans and creatures or other beings. I want to have relationships and interactions with them, but they always feel bad. Or they do something terrible or they get hostile when I'm around. So they have a moment of self-reflection where they're like, okay, what is wrong with me? Like, what am I doing? Why does this happen? And eventually they realize, maybe from interacting with their own kind or slowly learning about themselves over time, what happened when they were born and what they're meant to do. And their hidden abilities are honestly to work with those who lack inspiration with the Page of Wands reversed, and to be of service with their airy mental-based magic. They accidentally influence thought to a darker side when these people are lacking drive, passion, or they feel pessimistic, unfortunately making things worse. But their true power is to help them find their passion, energy, and playfulness toward life and goals again by influencing their thoughts and emotions. Another way we can see this is just that, like your fairy self kind of just needs to find their own sense of empowerment, work through their own anxieties or this distorted energy that they're in due to the circumstances of their birth, and like work through that and realize that like really everything is influenced by their emotions. So it's like, okay, if you want to interact with other creatures, life, organisms, whatever, they kind of realize that they have to really fix what's going on inside first, and then they'll realize that, oh, okay, when I show up this way, then okay, things want to play, or say they want to interact with plant life, or they want to change their little dead tree home. They're like, okay, I get it now. I just need to like not be so anxious or not give in to like negative thoughts, get out of this void that I'm in. But what's your shadow side, which I'm sure you guys are probably already assuming because we've kind of covered a lot here already. We have Five of Swords reversed, Nine of Wands reversed, and Queen of Cups. And I'm just going to keep it simple. You're just emotionally unstable. Your fairy self is just emotionally unstable. Like one moment it's severe depression, paranoia, and aggression towards others. There's a sense of thinking badly of yourself and giving up. But then you swing up and you have this magnetic emotional quality that overflows with the desire for connection, creativity, intuitiveness, and love. It's giving borderline, y'all. It's giving borderline. And it's it is your fault, like in the fairy realm, right? Like whatever was kind of tripping, like yeah. But let's focus on what you're meant to evolve into as a fairy. Excuse me. Oh man, you guys didn't hear it, but I just had a sneezing fit. With the Amenti Oracle, we have I care for the earth. And from the Untamed Elemental, we have the Rainbow reversed. So the Amenti card is clear. When we think of fairies, they usually are stewards of the earth and the physical embodiment of nature. Yet somehow your fairy self is very disconnected from that by the circumstances of their creation. What's interesting is that the Rainbow card says that rainbows are a powerful indicator that suffering and scarcity are not a final destination, and that the imbalance reversed energy means being stuck in the despair and aftermath of destruction. But to bring it back into balance, one needs to find creative flow and authentic expression. So what I see happening in your story is that over time, the earth is destroyed, say like from human activity. Most of the time it's probably gonna be human activity. A direct reflection of their pessimism and dying disconnected spirits. And at the threshold of calamity, your fairy self understands that their role is really an emotional one. While the rest of fairy kind is focused on birthing a new cycle of abundance and balance, your fairy self is set to work on the mind and the soul of man to usher them into a spot on this new journey where they will fit in with the new earth, the new way. But of course, you can only do this after your fairy self masters their own emotions and mental imbalance. So my pile ones, hopefully I didn't go too fast here, but as you can see, if we just want to break it down real quick, who is your fairy self? Your fairy self is or at least this version of you for what type of fairy would be, I think based off of what you might be going through or what you've recently gone through, because it seems like this is my pile of, soft, sweet, sensitive individuals who probably have just been dealt really bad cards in life and have had to like struggle and grow and suffer through a lot. This is my pile of people who deal possibly with mental health every day. And, shout out to y'all because I'm an OCD person, like real OCD. Your fairy self is a precious being, very sensitive, that is unfortunately also dealt really difficult cards by their birth being distorted and slightly corrupted for some whatever reason. And throughout their life, they have to realize that they are meant to be powerfully emotional and to influence for the greater good. But the first and major thing that they have to overcome is their own self negative narratives, things that they possibly even weren't taught, feelings of disconnectedness and isolation. And once they overcome that, they are meant to usher in the rest of the world and its inhabitants into a new era where they can purify their spirits and their minds from that same kind of like disconnectedness that your fairy self has experienced from its birth. You guys might have a lot to work on regarding your mental health or self-love journey or inner narratives. You guys also may be creatives stuck in a mental loop, or a person suffering from imposter syndrome, or you could have a history of trauma and grief, like I said, and have a hard time being present with your feelings and skillfully verbalizing like how you feel to those around you. But honestly, evolution is honestly where you're going. It's like you're meant to evolve regardless. So if you guys are struggling through things, I'm so sorry. Just know that your fairy self is too. And it's all gonna be okay. Sorry I can't be much more of a guide from that as well, but I'm very happy you guys stopped by to watch the reading. Let me know what you guys think. Bye. Pile 2, welcome to your fairy self. If you guys watched the intro, you would already have an idea of how we're going to do things with this reading. As you can see before you, I have a mood board already set up to capture the energy that I picked up on for who I visualize like your fairy self to be. Hopefully it resonates with you, let me know. But in this reading, we're gonna cover about like 5 energies here, or 5 spreads. It's gonna be pretty much how you were created and your hidden fairy abilities, or your fairy abilities, period. Your shadow side as a fairy, your role in the fairy realm, and also what you're meant to evolve into as a fairy as well. All right, so I will go ahead and get started. Please subscribe if you're already kind of effing with it. Just saying. It's free 99. Let's just go ahead and get into your reading. So, what energy or deity were you guys created from or created by? So, we have from the Untamed Elemental Storm. And like I told Pile 1, if y'all want to see the cards, like feel free to ask. But I just wanted to focus more on your mood board. But back to the cards here, we have from the Untamed Elemental, we have the Storm card. And honestly, Pile 2, it really couldn't even get more clear than that when I pulled this card, because it's clear that you guys came into being from the natural, like a natural phenomenon, like an actual storm, or from a deity associated with like lightning, storms, transformation, and renewal. You could be also, some of you, if you guys have like African heritage or whatnot, right, or associated with that like culture, you could be associated with the Orisha Shango. Maybe you work with also like Thor or Indra. Maybe life for you has been stormy and you've had to become used to the discomfort of change. Some of you may even live in a very stormy or rainy place at the time that you're viewing this. Or this pile could just be like a very, very like emotionally expressive bunch. um when you cry, maybe it's like a river. When you're upset, maybe the house shakes thunderously. Intuitively, I sense that like with this card, your fairy self was born after a millennia of rain when the realm was being washed anew. Thunder and lightning split the sky open in a ruckus, and neither the heavens nor the earth could understand why. Was it the wrath of the gods? Was the earth grieving? Such questions even faded away once the sky lightened and the sun came out. And when the flood water dissipated, a beautiful green oasis emerged from the mud. Even more intriguing was the fact that the earth had new inhabitants, which was you and your kind. So, what realm were you born into? Although I just went on a little tangent about my headcanon, we still have the initiation from the Work Your Light deck, which, as I can see, shows a dark, thunderous, and rocky place with very little life. But across the threshold, you see beyond the storm, and it's a more magical world with a more balanced ecosystem. And I believe your birth represented a new spiritual cycle for the world. And how you were shaped and molded, we have the Chariot, Queen of Swords, and Four of Pentacles reversed. So I know, also with the Chariot card from the White Newman deck, there's a lot of water in it. It literally looks like the Chariot is just, it's like, what's that old terrible movie, Waterworld? It literally looks like the world is just covered in water, and like that's just the way things are. So we have this watery element remaining the same. And of course, too, with the Chariot card, like Cancer is the sign that represents the Chariot card. So shout out to you if you're a Cancer. But with all these cards, I feel like Spirit is showing the why, like more than the how. And I believe that you were created because of a deity, likely feminine, a deity's need to let go and rebuild in a way. Like I feel with your spread, we're getting like very towery energy, but the cause of it is from this deity's point of view. I say this is because like within the Queen of Swords I have here, her environment looks very dry and warm. It's slowly crumbling. And I get the sense that with her eyes closed, it represents a level of denial, despite the fact that she holds the sword of truth and perception. And I also feel that with her body language, it's as though she initiates the storm or flooding with the Chariot energy as a way to overcome her internal obstacles. And with the Four of Pentacles reversed, it just gives this release after holding on to something so tightly for so long. So I'm going to say that you were formed from the sorrowful yet cleansing tears of a powerful entity who was finally letting go. And I do believe this is better expressed as a creation myth. Like I said earlier, the deity needed to initiate a new cycle for the realm or the earth after holding on to the memories, pain, love, and events of the previous cycle. And now she has let go so things can transform. So maybe you guys have been holding on to a lot of trauma, your past or tension in the body, and need to release it to bring about a new chapter. Or maybe you're focusing on maintaining better boundaries and discernment in your relationships, or even just regarding opportunities, because the Queen of Swords is a woman who has past life experience and uses those experiences to create, maintain, and uphold boundaries. So if we go further, let's look at your home environment. We have Death, clarified by Nine of Wands, Sun reversed by Queen of Pentacles, and Four of Cups by Ten of Swords. Some of you, or your fairy selves, some of you have definitely come from pile 1. However, for this pile, your physical home for your fairy version of yourself is a space ravaged by massive planetary, almost cosmic change with the Death card. With the Nine of Wands clarifying, your fairy self lives in the tiring aftermath, it lives in the rebuild. I remember earlier I said it's like the earth flooded. This could be pointing to that. And in the Nine of Wands card, it's like the woman in the image is trudging through mud and water. And you know how hard that is? thick mud almost up to your knees, right? Nothing else in sight, just miles and miles of mud. Like, that's very, very hard, tiring, and very frustrating to kind of move through. And even though the sun here is reversed, showing us that maybe things are dark or the sun is like tucked away in the sky, because in the Nine of Wands card, I'm seeing the woman is holding a lamp and things look very dim. I feel that with the Queen of Pentacles, your fairy self occupies a very fertile place, actually. It's like the outside world is still being washed away, or is actually finally like rising out of the water. But enough time has passed for little pockets of abundant plant life to sprout. So your fairy self could be like an authority over one of these spaces, but there's a bit of apathy here, I'm seeing. Looking at the Queen of Pentacles face, she appears very detached. I really think your fairy self has some conscious memory of its past life as this, like, as the heartbroken deity or maiden, divine creature that washed away the earth with their tears or their pain or their like release, right? But the few memories like fuzz over when they turn their eye inward to take a look, leaving them with a sense of like annoyance at the state of the world. It's like, all of this I gotta rebuild. Like having to wait for life to begin anew is very frustrating, but a necessary task. And with the Four of Cups and Ten of Swords, we see this. The isolation is painful, but represents a part of a broken past for yourself and the world. So if we tie that all together, like this little subsection here, where does your fairy self live? I think it lives in a very secluded, like, sanctuary of life, right? Of nature. And it's also full of abundance that will one day spread across the face of the earth. But for now, you're its sole occupant and steward. Now diving into what your abilities are as a fairy in this realm. You guys got 2 ability cards, okay? The Oaken Durs reversed and Winter's Throne from the Raven's Wand Oracle. Oaken Durs reversed talks about people needing to earn your loyalty and the need for you to be truthful about your boundaries. Keyword keeps popping up here, regardless of whether you step on toes or not, which aligns beautifully with the Queen of Swords energy that we received. Which, side note here, makes me wonder if for your origin story as a fairy, you weren't necessarily formed as a separate being from this deity, because Spirit showed me like the mother and Ponyo from that scene where she like rises up from the ocean to talk to Ponyo's father, like what's up with Ponyo, And the Queen of Swords in this deck also has red hair from the White Newman. And it makes me wonder if like you are actually like the deity. In the previous cycle, you maybe walked the earth or the realm you created in the form of something else, maybe even a human woman, but maybe you were heartbroken or you learned hard lessons on these past life journeys. But all of that like built up within you and you couldn't hold it longer, so you washed the world away. Your pain and your old life are gone. And you chose to transform that like a butterfly into the something that embodies nature, a fairy. But back to your abilities, with the Winter's Throne, it talks about being a figurehead for magic and operating without ego. So I'm thinking your abilities comprise of you using discernment with people and other creatures. Your abilities involve you knowing instantly who is friend or foe, and you help other people or entities do the same. But with the Winter's Throne, you don't take pride in it. You thrive off of just doing a good job and being a good help. It's like you chose to be reborn to help those learn the lessons you were forced to learn in your previous life or incarnation, while sparing them the heartbreak or relieving them from trauma or the tower moments that you experienced. And looking at your fairy archetype, you have the scribe, which aligns. You aren't one of those kinds of fairies who you'll just find flying around the natural world, just, messing with stuff and, being all whimsical and stuff. The stereotype of fairies is like, oh yeah, they fly around, their little wings, they flutter, and, they take care of the plants and the animals. Yeah, they do that. But you might be, the majority of your time, you are a preserver of knowledge. Some of you in the real world would make excellent writers, or you guys really love to read. In real life, you likely have been told you have a powerful story to tell, or you've been urged to write a book around hard life lessons and your wisdom. Maybe you guys just really jive with self-help and what are those people, those motivational speakers? Maybe you're a motivational speaker yourself. I think your fairy self really hangs around other intelligent beings like humans, who are trying to work through their own storms. So let's move on to what your unconscious or hidden powers are. And with the archetype cards, we have the Child Wounded, Reversed, and Mother card. So you have the unconscious ability as a fairy to truly mother and nurture whatever you give birth to, as well as those you find yourself connecting with. But the Child Wounded shadow attribute talks about refusing to forgive and move on as well. Blaming dysfunctional relationships on your past or your childhood most of all. And I'm thinking that although consciously you have the ability to offer and teach discernment, how you do it comes from a very nurturing place without compromising yourself. Again, boundaries. You have the ability to touch those who cannot see the truth of their bitterness beyond the fog of their own resentment. You somehow reach the spirit of those who lead by suspicion and blocked intuition with your lovely mothering qualities. Your abilities penetrate scars and clear the way for a better future with higher possibilities. So you may very well be an individual who will provide their advice to someone in a similar situation to your past, and yet you don't know just how nurturing your energy may be and how powerful of an example you are. And you can sit there and go, well, okay, the other day someone was crying and it's funny. It makes me think of that TikTok song with Jocelyn Hernandez, from Jocelyn's Cabaret, and it's the girl. She goes, "Yeah, I got heart problems," and Jocelyn's like, "What's wrong with your heart? What's going on with your heart?" She's just like talking over her. Y'all could still low key be like that, and you don't understand how some people might need to be like mothered in that way. Kind of tough love. Some people might receive that as nurturing because they probably never had anything to go off of before. So you guys, you just don't know. You guys, some of you are like, no, because again, we had Cancer energy popping up here and everything. Some of you guys are like, no, I know I could be very, you're the mother of the group, or it's easier for you to be emotionally nurturing to other people. But some of you honestly might be like, I don't know what you're talking about, but you don't realize just how much people need you or need your advice or words. However, I also think the opposite can be true. You may still have wounds from your past, a wounded inner child that still feels hurt or abandoned. You may mislead others with projections and magic that guide them toward you for you to be a surrogate mother of them, or like them to you. And this is as your fairy self, okay? But maybe the relationships or transactions lack clarity and the maturity required to mend them at times of tension. So your fairy self may influence people to always look forward without 100% healing what needs to be healed in the present. Or you quickly move on and abandon situations with the idea that you have better possibilities in the future. It's not necessarily the, what do you call it? The overtly positive attitude that people do to spiritually bypass, but your fairy self could just be, and even just you in the current, how you are now, you kind of might do that at times. It's like, oh, I've been through so much, so I just got to keep looking forward. That can serve a purpose, but sometimes if you don't do it right, that's not healthy. So your fairy self also does that. But this does move us into your shadow side as a fairy. And you guys got the Warrior reversed, which interestingly features a woman wielding a lightning bolt. So the shadow attribute for this says that you either trade your ethics for a win at any cost, or you are indifferent to the suffering of others. And it's funny I bring up the Jocelyn Cabaret thing, because her tone also was like, the girl is like, I have a serious heart condition, and Jocelyn's like, what's going on with you? What's going on with your heart? She didn't even want to hear it, really. She really didn't want to hear it, because I'm sure with Jocelyn, she's like, look, there are bigger things. You're here in front of me, aren't you? You guys might have that kind of mentality at times. For Swords Reversed, in the Emperor verse, like you could have, or at least your fairy self for sure with this energy, can have a very tyrannical, like detached method to the magic or their madness. For example, say your fairy self finds a soul who's struggling to feel seen due to their relationship with a draining, attention-seeking lover. Okay, your fairy self, sees their discontent, but they know, like in their gut, that person can rise to empowerment. So your fairy self uses magic to make the lover vanish, giving them a taste of their own medicine with the intention of letting, the beneficiary have the space to thrive without being sabotaged. And the beneficiary of the magic, or the person who was, struggling, they find some footing, and your fairy self pops in and out to guide them through lessons on discernment, self-care, and boundaries. This person finally receives the recognition they deserve, or they finally get a chance to find their true identity outside of that energy vampire. But there's still a problem, Their lover has been missing and unable to help maintain the home, bring income in, or fulfill a vital obligation. So this creates instability and hardship for the beneficiary of your magic. And once your magic wears off and their lover returns, your beneficiary is changed, yes, but at what cost? They've maybe lost their home or are overburdened with responsibilities they shared. And when they confront you, your fairy self, you just shrug your shoulders coldly and throw it back at them. Like, that stuff doesn't matter so much. Like, you're better off, aren't you? Right? You learned how to be yourself without them. You don't even leave room to unpack that. So your shadow side is that you sometimes don't care who you hurt with your methods to gain sovereignty, heal, or transform your life or the lives of others. Even when it comes to your wrath as this magical creature, you may believe the things you've done were warranted. Well, that's not entirely the case at times. You sometimes just have a get over it, it's not that bad attitude. And at times this could be a little Machiavellian. So in real life, just watch out for that, okay? So let's see who or what your fairy self is meant to evolve into. And with the Amenti Oracle, we have I speak with good intent and I follow my inner guidance. So I think for you, your fairy life is meant to grow your discernment and intuitive abilities even further until you have the highest clarity you can achieve. But also, you're meant to evolve as an individual to have true discernment about the knowledge you spread. You're ultimately meant to leave your shadow side behind and use your magic for pure intentions that don't have your ego attached, or at least don't allow for your ego to distort the effects and benefits. Because I think at times with your abilities, your fairy self, you genuinely want to help, but your ego still gets in the way because maybe your beneficiary situation triggers your past life or something. So let's bring this all together. Who would you be, or what type of fairy would you be in another reality, in a fairy realm, whatever, right? You guys would be a very discerning, boundary having and giving magical being who is not only a steward of nature and the earth after a calamity or aftermath, but you're also most likely, if not a full divine incarnation of what brought that calamity and change to the physical world, you are at least a fragment of that, or a part of a personality of that. And your fairy self doesn't necessarily care so much for tending to the earth, only because the earth that they have to tend is very limited and they still are working through their own emotional hang-ups and old emotional past. But your fairy self does like to help other beings, other creatures, especially intelligent ones like themselves, but at times can stir up a little chaos because of their own borderline Machiavellian ways. I did draw some cards that I had randomly made, full of traits and things that you're, that are fairy adjacent or whatever. So I'm just going to go ahead and read them off. And again, if you want to know or see them or whatever, let me know and I can figure that out. But what I got for your pile is, and I'm just going to read the words off here. We got spring, Fire magic. You guys did get angel wings. Living under a waterfall. So your fairy self also likely lives under a waterfall, or near a body of water. Again, we got water popping up here a lot. White wings, iridescent wings, dream infiltration. That's also another ability you guys would have. Heterochromia, which is your eyes being different colors. We also have illusions here. So illusion magic, that might also tap into the whole using magic to help people build their own discernment and see clarity, but also illusions can be very chaotic. Distortion can create its own issues. So I think that also points to how sometimes you might not give people the full benefit or the full ethical benefit you think you're giving them with your magic, if that makes sense as a sentence. We also got cold aura, pixie wings, and black wings. So yeah, that's what I got for you, pile 2. That's your fairy self. Let me know what you think, and please, again, subscribe. I'd love to see you in another video and just hanging around the channel. Bye. All right, pile 3, last but not least, I'm just gonna let you know right now the vibe. I'm filming this like late Sunday night. I work Tuesdays through Saturdays, so this is like my Saturday night, but I'm mad tired. So if I start tripping over my words and doing stuff, like, ignore me. But if you watch the intro to this video, you already have an idea of how we're gonna do things here. We are looking at what type of fairy you'd be. So welcome to your fairy self. I have a mood board that I made to match the vibe and energy of what I picked up on for your pile and what I visualize, as well as to reflect the other traits and things that I had drawn for you guys, which we'll cover at the last minute. But definitely for this, we're going to tap into where you came from as a fairy, who or what created you. We're going to look at your fairy abilities, your shadow side, the role you play in the fairy realm, or your purpose, or how you operate, and then what you're meant to evolve into. We also get into how, where you live and all that. So without further ado, let us begin. Okay, so pile 3. Your pile got 2 cards instead of 1 regarding what energy, deity, or whatever created you. We got the Lion reversed and the Thunderbolt, which, to begin, maybe some of you have also traveled here from pile 2 because their pile had elements of thunder and lightning. But the Lion in the Untamed Elemental is a card of acquiring and maintaining justice. Side note, if you want to see the cards that I got, because I drew multiple spreads for each pile's reading, let me know. But in the meantime, I just wanted you guys to be able to focus on the mood board, just to, set the vibe and tone. But getting back into this Lion energy, like I said, the Lion in the Untamed Elemental is a card of acquiring and maintaining justice, but when it's reversed, it says the querent is struggling with groupthink, having the courage to also be a disruptor, and even finding their own voice to speak up for the truth. However, the Thunderbolt card is a card of dispelling ignorance. The card says, though Thunderbolt seems destructive, his temper plays a part in the evolution of much of Earth's life forms. Thunderbolt teaches us that the noxious obstacle to freedom can be overcome with little effort once you cease clinging to limiting and damaging ideas. And it goes on to say that the root of a problem lies in one's perception. So I feel like you guys were created to embody a being that can express both the Thunderbolt energy and the Lion energy with balance. It's as though what created you understood the idea that perception matters, but it couldn't move beyond its own personal limitation. Or we could say that it saw this for a collective like humanity, dealing with injustice at every corner, and yet individuals on their own are afraid to speak up and out with pure integrity, as well as courage, because, the lions are about courage. Also, when the Lion card popped up, I instantly thought about the Wizard of Oz. I don't even be watching that movie, so maybe some of you literally just watched Wizard of Oz, you guys are really into it, or maybe you just watched Wicked and you're obsessed with that. Let me know in the comments. But There really is, again, the situation with like a lack of courage from people. And maybe that's a struggle you also have at the moment. The difference between right and wrong. You know what is wrong about the state of your environment, your country, or the world, and yet you believe your one voice doesn't matter, or you're too small to make a drastic change, that your one voice doesn't have power. Or you could have dealt with issues with personal empowerment in the past. And with the Thunderbolt, it's like your fairy self was like shocked into being, or into its realm, with a reckoning, this very reckoning power. But if we were to look at what realm or world you were born into, we have Warrior Woman from the Work Your Light Oracle deck. And this card, as you can see, asks if you've answered your calling. And before us stands a woman in armor with her blade sharp and ready. And you know what's funny? In the guidebook for the Thunderbolt card, it literally said, Thunderbolt is a weapon of the sky. So maybe your fairy self is made to be a weapon that enacts swift justice or karma among the magical realm. But for Warrior Woman, I feel like your fairy self is also a traveler, answering distant calls from distant places that need someone to fight for them, someone to raise their voice and bring justice and balance. How were you forged, though? If we were going to go a little further, again, I think you were formed literally like the epitome of lightning. Like, you were formed swiftly, like a shock to the earth or the universe. But this happened in the moment of a chaotic and intense battle between opposing forces. In this battle, good and evil were at war for dominance. I mean, it's giving simple story, right? But intuitively, I was getting the idea that this war had been waging like timelessly. The polarities were growing tired as one would gain the upper hand, only to be overpowered by the other in an endless cycle. But with the Magician reversed, it's like an energy of, like, I don't want to do my job anymore. So your kind was created instantaneously to be a new race or generation of warriors that keep the universe in balance, if that makes sense. Like, there are also beings on the side of darkness as well, but of course you were created to seek out areas where darkness and injustice is trying to gain the upper hand. So your fairy archetype here is also the alchemist, and you literally represent magic and alchemy, and everyone else sees you as having the power to change matter radically. And what are your powers? We got the daisy and the dandelion. So what I have here, or what we have here, pile 3, we clearly have a fairy here, and again, another lion showing up in the card. Anyway, it's like this card is also pretty straight to the point. Like, your magical abilities are having the power to bring joy, whimsy, and happiness, to be a force of good, the light. Like, y'all are just whimsical. Your fairy self wanders around throwing like fairy dust on people or something, or like making children laugh and making the sun shine. You guys are the baby in the sun from the Teletubbies. And maybe that's what like ties us all in. Maybe in this realm your fairy self occupies, you are perceived as a fairy, but you're honestly high-key an angel. You were born to anchor light into this world. And the thing is like, if we think like biblically, biblically about angels, like from Christianity, usually they come in like lightning. Like, it's like they just come into our reality, and they have to do the whole be not afraid, because it's chaotic for a second, for the human mind. And even when you are anchoring light into the world to oppose darkness, that also might appear very chaotic, or just like, fast like a flash of lightning, or it might make a noise like crack the sky like lightning. So yeah, I think that's like really dope. Actually, I really like pile 3, your pile. Let's look at your home environment though. So for your home environment, we have Strength clarified by the Sun reversed, Four of Wands reversed by the Magician, and Queen of Swords by the Eight of Wands reversed. Intuitively, I felt that your home was one, your fairy self was actually building from their own magic and resourcefulness. Four of Wands is a card of the home, right? And community, but reversed, that home is unstable or incomplete and just lacking a balanced, comfortable environment. So if we assume most fairies live like communally, then your fairy self doesn't with the Four of Wands reversed. However, we can have a scenario where your fairy self is building their home and safe haven with the intention to manifest community or stability. And with strength here, the home or environment is controlled to be emotionally sound. It makes me think that like creatures and beings that cross the threshold are met with like immediate tranquility and peace. Um, Strength can also be pointing to the environment being a safe haven for animals. So and strength is also lions. um, and that's something that's happened in these piles, is that a symbol has literally just recurringly popped up in like each spread or each subspread. So yeah, we got lions again here. So your fairy self also may like find a bunch of creatures like coming in and out to rest, or they invite them in, or they just go and collect animals to love or whatever. So um it's just, yeah, like honestly, maybe you guys are really just like animal lovers. um but and it's again like these animals are like feeling very peaceful, tranquil. They're just laying around, lounging, drinking fresh water, like whatever. They just get loved on by you. But with the sun reversed, I feel like it's like the home is like very hidden or tucked away, kind of like pile two. With the Queen of Swords, there's a boundary around the space, and only certain things can get in and out. And that applies to people, okay, not just animals and creatures, and also energies. And with the Eight of Wands reversed, the purpose the home has is to like slow things down, slow energy down, like make it more present. Make or people or like who inhabits the space, make them more present, still and tranquil. Your home is, as a fairy, is like definitely a sanctuary for you and the creatures that you love and take care of. And it was made by you and through you with your magic, and it's meant to be hidden and tucked away. Now regarding your hidden unconscious magical abilities. So we have the child eternal as a light attribute. This instantly leads me to believe that you are immortal on the physical level. Also, that people who stay in close proximity to you remain immortal as well. Or, like, the effects of aging or the process of aging slows down. And, like, once they leave your presence, the aging process continues. Also, your conscious abilities that bring... Ooh, geez, I just, like, stepped on something. Also, your conscious abilities that bring joy, warmth, and play to everyday life are the cause of this. It's a hidden side effect or bonus if you'll take it. But with the changing faces reversed card that I received for your pile, there is a deceptive, like little white lies quality to this magic of yours. A willful deception with honorable intentions. And it's hard to say this unconscious ability is good or bad in the long run. This could be pointing to you being an actual shapeshifter. Maybe you turn into animals or different people, or even your age at time changes, which this is crazy because like, I think I was channeling an example regarding this before. Earlier this morning, I was also thinking about that movie Weapons, and I saw it with my friend long ago when it came out. And the ending was hilarious, but however, this morning I was thinking about the witch in the movie, and I thought, if I was a witch whose immortality came from stealing energy or the youth of children, why would I choose to kidnap them and just siphon it off? And I was literally thinking about how these kinds of witches should just play with the children and take care of them and just soak up the youth that's naturally fading from them as they grow. It's giving clean, renewable energy and ethical consumption. All right. And I think your fairy self might do that. And I don't think they do it intentionally on purpose. Like, I just think that that might happen. Or people might perceive that way. With the Five of Wands and Seven of Swords reversed, this ability comes out when you're trying to keep the peace, resolve conflict, or even save others from their adversary in a way, or maybe to save yourself from conflict. However, this energy gives unconventional, hidden means to win over conflict, subjugating an adversary or restore peace. And this kind of magic may not play by the rules, or be a little chaotic and work so below the radar that it makes people point the finger at the wrong person or the wrong one. With your conscious ability to spread joy and restore peace, you may just like chuck your happiness and peace for all magic at everyone as like a fix all, but it creates havoc. People weren't made to be happy all the time. Maybe the havoc that is created is within you as well. Maybe your fairy self throws themselves off balance. Maybe they weaken themselves or fall ill because they don't know their limits. I do think you're meant to foster a loving and peaceful environment as a fairy for the truth to come to light so that humanity or whatever creatures you're involved with can fix their own problems themselves. For some of you, this magic arises from a people-pleasing place. Your fairy self wants peace among others. And with the Seven of Swords reversed, that I got, like, your fairy self ignores the root of the matter sometimes, or your fairy self lies to themselves and others about how they feel, like who's at fault. And with the Hierophant reversed as well, your ability to spread joy and love and peace, and with the Hierophant reversed, your abilities to spread joy, love, and peace are utilized in a blasphemous way. I heard it becomes an abomination. So for you, pile 3, it seems like we're kind of taking an interesting turn, and it makes sense that some of you could be from pile 2, because I did call pile 2 a little bit of a Machiavellian at times, and this kind of gives that too. So it's looking like, on the outside, we look very angelic, but sometimes unconsciously we might actually, with our magic, and I think it's just mostly like in the extreme when your magic, again, if we're talking about unconscious, right, these are things that are outside your awareness, and usually things that happen outside of our awareness come from things that are not healed or integrated properly or like whatever. So I don't think your angel fairy self is a bad person. No, I think it's quite the opposite. I think sometimes there's just too much good. So let's look at your shadow side though. We have the Detective reverse saying that you falsify information. Plus we have Temperance and Six of Wands reversed. Six of Wands reversed can show a lack of achievement and recognition as well as like wounded pride. However, I'm not getting that. Like, considering the previous information we've divined, I feel we're being pointed back to a people-pleasing side of you. But what I'm getting with this shadow side is that your fairy self is willing to lie, bend the truth, omit information to get peace, harmony, and balance. Maybe in their journeys, we find that you are like alive as a fairy during a more tumultuous chapter of Earth's history where races and creatures alike they just don't get along. Maybe it's a time of endless war where the darkness again is gaining the upper hand. Darkness, ego, and decay seem to have the upper hand, and at times your fairy self feels that they are falling short or they're failing their mission to bring harmony to the world, and so they might use underhanded and sneaky methods. They withhold the truth from one person because they believe that person too ignorant to carry the responsibility of the truth. Or they choose to stand dormant at the center of a city or village as a beacon of light, strong enough to hold back the forces of darkness, like scuttling at the region's edge, because ultimately your fairy self is afraid the community would destroy themselves if your fairy self just said, what needed to be said with love. So like that's actually really interesting, because if we're thinking about this here, right, like fairies are not like perfect creatures. So if you came to this reading thinking like, oh, she's calling me an angel, da da da. Yeah, I mean, you have to especially humans in this story of yours, you know, you might come off as very angelic, but you're not an angel, you're a fairy. And fairies can be both very joyous and giving and serving, but also very mischievous. Um, let's look here at what you're meant to evolve into or towards, though, as your fairy self. From the Amenti Oracle, we have I Honor Virtue and the Manta Ray card from the Untamed Elemental. And with the Manta Ray, your fairy self is meant to evolve into a being that can calibrate its energy to experience more ease through life struggles and negative events. This involves your fairy self surrounding themselves with healthy relationships, letting go of pain and toxicity, and practicing self-respect. Okay? The card says one must do this so that your time and energy are efficiently spent and you are more available for play and fun. So this pile, you guys are definitely the kind of people who maybe absorbs too much of the external world's crap. And you may have had struggles with choosing a truth or life that really aligns for you. You could have wanted to choose a lesser understood path for yourself or to speak up about a necessary truth, but you were too afraid to disturb the peace or upset the crowd. And understand that what drains you is not aligned for you. It's a simple fact. Or you guys could have had a history of being a warrior or fighter for everyone but yourself, allowing life to get a little too serious. Ultimately, this reading is here to show you that it's time for you, much like your fairy self, to become more playful and energetic. Spread your light that way instead of just giving it without honesty, and your body and spirit will really thank you. With the Amenti Oracle card, your fairy self is also meant to develop towards honoring the 4 cardinal virtues. And these pillars are temperance, prudence, courage, and justice. 3 of those have already shown up in your reading as something your fairy self struggles with. You know, to demonstrate temperance, your spiritual scale must be balanced. Okay? For prudence, you must exercise caution. Courage, keep an open heart and stay strong. And to demonstrate justice is to maintain what's fair. All of these 4 virtues are meant to be followed for the upliftment of man, but first they protect and empower you. Your fairy self is meant to take the virtues it influences in others with its magic and apply it to themselves to bring their existence into a more harmonious alignment. You know, this pile is definitely the ones who, I'm sure you guys scroll on social media and you guys see, especially if you're American, see all the crazy things the current administration is doing. And you again probably think like you either hold too much of the collective's BS and need to really have boundaries with yourself and make sure you're taking care of nurturing your own light. Because again, you guys really might be earth angels and everything. Because I do feel like here with this energy regarding, you know, what type of fairy you would be, I do think that your fairy self is a direct reflection for you, pile 3, of like who you guys actually are in real life. I think you guys are, what is it, light warriors or light workers or whatever. And some of you also may feel like you're destined to have a platform or to speak out about things or to just like take action on things that are going down. But I think sometimes you guys carry too much, you know, and maybe in the past, again, you guys just carry too much without actually shaking shit up the way that you needed to. So looking at your cards or traits that I got for your guys' reading, I mean, these aren't like the mood board that I made for you isn't a direct reflection of these, but these are also other traits that your fairy self might have. We have black wings, something about spring. Maybe you're born in the spring or your fairy self is most active in spring. Fire magic, living under a waterfall, which is also what pile 2 got. Shapeshifter, which is also, I think, something that pile 2 got. We have face wings, raspy voice, pointed ears, horns, spirit magic, tattered wings, and cunning. I'm not going to go into those, but those are some traits that I pulled for you guys. Please subscribe if you like the vibe. And I hope this reading, really rocked with you, Pile 3. Talk to me in the comments. I want to know. I just want to know your thoughts and everything. I like to talk to people. Anyway, y'all have a good one. I'll see you in another video. Bye.